Is that stringing thing backwards? Everything's backwards because we're live. I never made the thing. All right, we are live. Welcome. This is Pat with Racket Stringing Tips, and this is our second live Q&A. So shout out to everybody. 100 subscribers. Our first Q&A we did at 50 subscribers. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this again at 100, and then we'll keep going. We'll do it at 200 until, you know, of course, we reach that milestone, and then we go from there. We're just building a community of tennis stringers and anybody just interested in string technology, tennis technology, racket stringing, tennis geeks, tennis players, whatever. Everyone's welcome. Kind of building a community. I've had a lot of questions this week on hybrid strings. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to go into hybrid stringing and dive a little bit deeper into just the whole idea of hybrid stringing. I know that's kind of, you know, it's been around for some time. It's kind of, I think, more recently been, I think, more of a regular practice. I can remember back when, I guess, going back to the 80s, when Prince graphite rackets and Wilson Pro Staff rackets were kind of the standard for players, you know, for the 4.0 and above, 4.5 group. And with those rackets, you tended to break a lot of strings, and really the only thing that was available was your Prince Pro Blend, right? If you're familiar with that. And what that was it was a Kevlar and a Prince synthetic string. So that was the combination. And Kevlar is one of those things that just is not very forgiving, but it is durable. So if you were any type of a string breaker, you would be using Pro Blend, basically. And so that became a popular one. And it came prepackaged. And then pretty soon, you know, I think people were buying Kevlar reels. You could buy Kevlar reels. And then, you know, people were starting to do their own hybrids with that. And that was before, you know, poly was available to the general public. And so at that time, I was using a Prince Graphite 2 mid plus, or just mid size, and it had 14 mains, if you could believe that. And so it had such an open string pattern that I would always be stringing it pretty tight too, at 62 pounds or maybe 60 pounds or something like that. And I would be breaking string, you know, every couple of days on that. And so, but I still wouldn't go to Pro Blend. I just couldn't. I mean, that stuff was so hard, and it just had no feel or playability. So I really didn't use it. So I would just kind of use a 16 gauge synthetic gut. I think I started to play with Gamma TNT, and then I was getting some TNT. I was getting those free from Gamma, so I was going to like a 17 gauge, and I love the playability of that, but it wouldn't last very long. But I was stringing my own rackets; it was not that big of a deal. But for clients who needed some more durability, we were trying to figure out what to do. And then I was in, you know, stringing in California, and then at that time, there was a guy who was actually producing his own poly strings out of a warehouse in California, and he would be kind of going to some of the local tennis shops and, you know, hawking his sets, and he was selling them. I don't know. I was getting them for, I don't know, $2-3 a set, and it was this yellow poly string, no brand. It was just his own, you know, brand that he was producing out of a warehouse. And I never did actually see the production facility. It would have been kind of cool, I think, maybe to see that. But so yeah, it was kind of just, you know, we were starting to mess around with the hybrids then. Now, this would have been in the early 90s, I guess. So. And so we would be putting, you know, in these pro staffs and these you know, players frames that were breaking string all the time. So we would be putting poly in the mains, and then usually I think it was like a 16 gauge. There was only one option, and then we would be putting whatever other string that they were playing with in the crosses, and we would loosen the poly a little bit because it felt stiffer. A lot of people weren't used to it, and they were like, this is kind of stiff. So we're loosening up a little bit on the poly, and then keeping the crosses probably at the same gauge that they were used to. So that kind of brings us to where we're at today, and that is talking about, hybrid strings. And I kind of, outlined what hybrid strings are, but basically a hybrid string is a combination of two strings, and there's a characteristic of the strings that's different, right? It could even be the same string, but a different gauge. And that happens a lot of times. People will try that. It all comes down to what is it that you're trying to leverage in your rackets. So, rackets have their own characteristics too, right? Depending on the string pattern. So you're going to get rackets that are more prone to be rackets that for power players. There's going to be rackets that are going to be more for the control player, for the all-around player, for the player who's looking for more spin, more performance, right? So the racket's got its own characteristics. So now how can we leverage the string so that you can not only use that performance from the racket, but yet accentuate whatever that is and just make it work for you better? So the string is going to be just as important as the frame, right? And we also got to take into consideration that strings lose a lot of tension. Now, we don't really want to compare what we're going to be doing to, for our own rackets and for our clients with what the pros do, right? Sure, the pros are playing with this string at this tension, but you got to realize they're stringing their rackets every other day. They've got, a top player like Federer, or just use him as an example. He uses 50 frames in a year, and he'll have those things strung 800 times, right? He'll have 800 rackets strung a year, or whatever it is, every 6 months or whatever it is. So they've got crisp, they can always use that crisp feels, but you got to remember, you're not going to have that opportunity or the resources. Generally, it just doesn't make sense to do that, right? And so we've got to be able to figure this out for ourselves. We can't always use the reference that we get from what's happening out in the pro arena. So, taking that for what it's worth, we've got to figure out what's going to be best for our racket, and how we're going to be able to get the most out of it. So the first thing that I would look at, so if somebody comes to me, I've had a lot of questions this week as far as, hey, I've got this 16 by 19 racket, and I'm trying to get a combination of, low power or low control, extra spin, and something that's arm friendly. So what do I do? Well, if you don't have a reference point, if you're helping somebody, or you're trying to figure this out for yourself, or you're just getting started with this and you don't have a reference point, what I would recommend doing is starting at the midpoint. Since we're starting fresh here, we have no preconceived baseline to go off of. So let's just start from square one, right? So what I generally tend to do is start at the middle of the racket and go, okay, so looking at whatever string pattern we have in the frame, I'll go, okay, so if it's a dense pattern, like a 16 by 19, 16 by 18, versus a 14 or 16 by 20 or whatever pattern. So if it's more dense, I'll go, well, I can probably go with a thinner string. So I'm going to be looking at 17, 18, and now they even have 19 gauge strings, right? So I'm going to be looking at that versus looking at a 16 or 15 light kind of string. I'll start in the middle. So I'll look at the tension range of the racket. Every racket has its own tension range, which is usually 8 to 10 pound range. So I'll start in the middle. And then when going with the hybrids, I'll go, okay, well, if I'm trying to achieve more spin, then I'm probably going to want to go to I need to make sure that I have a lot of, that the strings really will work well together, right? That they're going to move and they're going to repel the ball. And so I'm going to want to try putting something like a poly-based string in the mains, because I know that along with a synthetic or multi-filament, you're going to be able to, the bounce back is going to, the spring back is going to be a lot better than if you reverse it and put a synthetic or a multi-filament in the main and then put a poly-based in the cross, right? Because you're not going to have quite as much kickback from the string. So let's take that into consideration. So I'm going for the more spin, so I'm going to go with a poly-based string. And because I'm using poly, it's going to be more durable. So I'm going to be able to go with a thinner gauge, and plus I'll be able to get more spin too. So, I'll try, I've liked 18 gauge polys, but I would probably start with a 17 gauge, because I don't know if I'm going to be breaking strings. This person that you're stringing for is going to be breaking. So I would start with a 17 gauge and find a poly. Now, if you want just a basic poly, there's a lot of performance polyester strings out there. If you want something that's a little bit softer, because whether you want to make sure it's friendly on the arm and whatever, there's many out there. I think one that I was recommending for somebody was a Solinco. Oh man, it wasn't Tourbite. It was I can't remember which one it was, but it was a soft. Let me look it up. I actually have my computer up, my other computer, so I'm going to go with looking that up. I forget what it was, but it was a soft base string, so it was going to be a little bit more friendly on the arm. I don't think it was Tourbite. It was, oh, here he goes. I think it was Hyper G. Maybe it was Hyper G. All right, I'm getting lost in all the 10 strings now. But yeah, I forget what it is. But all right, I'll just go beyond that. It might be Hyper G. Oh yeah, Hyper G soft. It comes in various gauges, of course. So yeah, I was going to recommend that as a main string, and then I still want to get some good performance, because it'll kind of lighten up the poly based component of the string setup. So I'll go with my go-to multi-filament, which is NXT, Wilson NXT, right? So I'll also put that in the 17 gauge, because I'm not as worried about breaking the cross strings, because you're mostly going to break the main strings. Now, of course, if you have a really rough main string, some of the polys that are either square based or that have some other type of component to it, they're going to burn into the crosses a little bit more, and so you might actually end up burning, that the cross string might actually end up breaking premature because of the friction. Because if you've ever strung poly and you've whipped it through your machine really quick, you can sometimes feel the heat, right, that's coming off of that. And if you don't string it right, you could be putting notches in it before you even get the racket done. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. I've done that before several times when I've been in a major hurry, or I've just kind of whipped that string through there, and you could just see that it's already started with the notching, because that's what you're trying to avoid, obviously, right? Because that reduces the life of the strings. And so what I've found with that combination with if you're using a poly-based string that's pretty smooth, doesn't have a lot of roughness to it, it works fine with the 17 gauge multi-filament. And that's just been a really good combination. And you could put whatever, other poly in the mains that you want. You can use whether it's Luxilon or whatever your favorite poly string is, try that in the mains. Alu Power, I used to use Timo, which was like an 18 gauge, because that was like one of the only 18 gauges at the time that I could find. Now all of them, I mean, everybody comes in 18 and 19 even, right? You can get down to 112 millimeter as far as the gauge, right? So it's just like crazy what just crazy how thin you can go now on tennis strings. It's almost like it's badminton string or something. But I think badminton string's what 122 gauge. But anyways, so yeah, so you can go really thin and probably still have the durability of a synthetic gut. So that's what I would go for, like the best playability scenario. Now, if you want to have the best performance or feel, then you're going to probably want to go either with a natural gut or a performance multi-filament like a Technifiber NRG or like Wilson NXT or a few other ones as far as even Yonex. Yonex has a really good multi-filament. So you would put that in the mains, and then to kind of control that power a little bit, you would then put something else in the crosses. You could put a synthetic in there, like a monofilament, solid core, or you might want to put in a even a poly. You could even put a really thin poly in. That'll kind of bring down that'll bring some control to that. The only thing is, I don't think you'll get as much spin out of that combination as you would, because the strings are not going to bounce off of, shoot off of the string bed as quite as much as with the other combination, because you'll find that the strings are not moving quite as much. So, so that's another option. But, I guess getting back to the original idea there, start somewhere in the middle, document what it is that you did, write it down, what you tried, check the performance afterwards from, if it's for your racket, you can take some notes or whatever. And then later on, just change one variable, right? Don't change too many things, because then you don't know what it is that's working for you. So, let's say you started in the mid-range and you have that combination of the Solinco soft poly string 17 gauge in the mains, and then you did a multi-filament performance 17 gauge in the crosses, and you found out that you remember you strung it right in the mid-range of the let's say it was 50 to 60, so you strung it at 55. Okay, so now you're feeling like you need more power. Okay, well, I'd probably loosen up the poly a little bit, and go down maybe 3 pounds. Usually 2 to 3 pounds, you should be able to feel a little bit of a difference. So I would go down maybe 3 pounds on the poly, right? Leave the multi-filament maybe at the same tension, and kind of see how that is. If you feel like you're not getting enough power, I'm sorry, if you're feeling like you're not getting enough control, then tighten up the poly a little bit. Go a little bit tighter on the poly, and maybe leave the multi-filament. So that way you're only changing one variable, and then you can see how that works. If you're trying to get a little bit more spin and you're finding, I'm not breaking any string, go lighter, go to an 18 gauge, or even try 19 gauge, see what it feels like, see if you're actually able to get, a little bit more spin, or, you're getting performance out of it. Sometimes a 17 gauge in the same string might perform better than the 19 gauge. It just kind of depends. The thing is, if you are at all concerned about string breakage and durability, and getting, if you're in that kind of, if you're in that part, then you probably would want to try something like a poly in the main strings, and then use a better playing string, the performance multi-filament in the crosses. Many players have had great success using natural gut in the mains, and then offsetting that with a synthetic or a polyester in the crosses. And if you don't break string and you want the best performance, best feel that you can out of a hybrid, that's probably how you're going to get that. So, um, yeah, I'll just take a break here real second. And so, let's see, what else do we have? Um, yeah, so that's kind of where I would start with the hybrids, um, and then you can kind of um, change that up. I mean, I get a lot of questions as far as um, looking for a better performance hybrid, and there's a lot of packaged hybrid strings that you can buy. Some of them are limiting to some degree, right? Because you've got like one or two options, and it's sometimes a good place to start. I always generally what I'll do is I'll just buy one set of the one string that I want and one set of the other, and then I have enough for two rackets because generally I'll have two frames, and then I can kind of have that, and so that usually works pretty well. And I think you should be able to get a really good hybrid setup for a couple, for $10 to $15 a setup. You can get a pretty nice hybrid combination and stuff. So that's kind of like where I start when I don't have any benchmark or any idea of where to go with hybrid stringing. Now, if somebody comes to you or you kind of already know where you're starting from, is like, okay, I really, I have arm problems, but I break a lot of string. Well, you probably stay away from the polyester kind of string, right? You probably then go, well, let's see, what can we do? We want something kind of durable. Well, why don't we just go with a thicker gauge of the same string? So maybe I'll go with a 15 light multi-filament in the mains, and then go with the 17 gauge multi-filament or synthetic in the crosses. That works well too, right? Because then, and it just kind of depends. So you have to take into consideration the characteristics of the racket that you have in front of you, and then look at what's most important to you, or just start in the middle ground and stuff. So I hope that helped. As far as that's concerned. But man, you could just talk, for hours about hybrid stringing. So if you have any questions about hybrid stringing, there's a new setup you want to try. We haven't really talked about tension variability. But if you have any of those kind of questions, leave some comments in the feed. Leave comments. And questions, and I do answer all my questions within 24 hours. And if you have any suggestions for anybody, or you've tried something that really works out well, because there are just hundreds or thousands probably combinations of hybrid strings. So as a racket technician, not as a racket stringer, but as a racket technician, it's really important to kind of understand strings, to know more about strings. And so I really, encourage you to just check out when new strings come out. Check out when companies are releasing new things. Go on to the websites of, Wilson, the top companies, right? Luxilon, Wilson, Prince, that's another story. But, Solinco, a few others, go directly to some of those websites as well, and kind of learn about the technologies, about their strings and the characteristics, because when you say, oh yeah, I'll just put a poly in there. Well, poly is just a uh, a general term of a type of string, right? But there could be 100 different types of poly string. Some are designed to help you create more spin. Some are designed to be more powerful. Some are designed to be softer. Some are designed to create some other type of characteristics for your playing style. There are a lot that kind of blend together, but if you can, learn about all those different types, you might be able to better, as a racket technician, help that person that you're stringing for. And ultimately, that's going to increase your business. It's going to increase customer retention. You're going to get more people coming back to you, because really that's what it's all about. I was going online and I was calling different shops from around the country to find out a little bit more about stringing labor, what types of machines people use, and I'll have that actually in a whole nother video. But it was interesting, and what I think the takeaway from that is you really need to have a lot of tools in your arsenal to be competitive, and learning the technologies, being able to help your client increase their performance with their equipment is gonna be huge, and it's gonna get you a lot farther than just saying, oh yeah, I'll string your racket, I've got some string, you've got this choice or this choice, right? That's kind of like, the people who really don't care, or they don't have any option at the time, that's who you're gonna get. But that's not, I don't think that's sustainable, right? You really need to, I think, go beyond that. So anyways, that's a little bit about that. So what else are we going to talk about? Let's see. How about, if you have any idea, I think I'm not going to talk too much about certification. Well, you know what I'll do is I'll just kind of touch on certification. I'm actually going to make a video on, the certification that's out there, and you might be familiar with it through the United States Racket Stringers Association. That's really the only one in the United States. Europe, there's one there as well. If you're stringing for professionals, sometimes there is there are a few other programs that are available, certifications. I had to go through one with the Wilson team back when I was stringing on that team. But aside from that, the United States Racket Stringers Association has a certification, and you can either just join the United States Racket Stringers Association and get resources from them, and then you'll get the sticker and the logos that you can put on your collateral, whether it's your business card or the window of your shop or on your website, so you can do that. But also, the real certification is the Master Racket Technician. And I just actually recently renewed mine. I actually had started it 12, 15 years ago, before it was even called that, when it was called the Certified Racket Technician. And then they upped it sometime in the 90s to Master Racket, or in the 2000s, I don't remember, Master Racket Technician. Basically, that just means that you can string a tennis racket within a certain amount of time adequately. You can customize the frame, you can add a grip, you can build up a grip, you can replace a grommet strip, and you can do this at a certain level where people will be comfortable to take their rackets to you. It takes a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of training. I'm going to be hoping to help everybody with that as well on this channel, and I'll be making videos that kind of associate with that. And it's just the yearly thing where you have access to a grommet network and a racket network. So really, if you're looking for a certain racket, or you're looking for a certain grommet strip for a racket, it connects you with this global system of where other people have that, and they advertise it and so forth. At one time, they also had stringing machines, so it was like easier to kind of hear where racket stringing machines are available, and because I've been reading a lot about that recently, where it seems like it's been getting harder to find a good used racket machine, and people are like, where can I find a good used racket stringing machine for, under $1,000 or whatever? And every once in a while there'd be a few machines that would pop up, here or there, maybe a Prince Neos or just an old Echelon or something like that. But you wouldn't see a lot of quality machines, or even you wouldn't see a lot of computerized machines or anything like that. Those are becoming a little bit harder to find. I think maybe during the pandemic, a lot more people were learning how to string rackets, or were buying them up, and so even on eBay they're harder to find. So you have to be patient. You have to plan ahead. So what I would say, I'll just kind of give you a few tips here. We've been live now for about 30 minutes. I'll probably go like another 10, 15 minutes. I don't think I said I was going to go for a certain period of time. We'll just keep going. If some people have some questions, we can go with that. But basically, what I would say is kind of have an idea what it is you're looking for. Have an idea what your budget is, and set that aside when you're doing your research, so that you don't get hung up and caught up with the first thing that you see and you're like, I better take that. So yeah, of course I would be starting to do my research on eBay, see what's available on there, and continually look. I would almost go on a daily or every couple days, look on there, because something that comes on there that's quality, that's decent, that's going to get taken up quick. A couple years back, I would see Babolat machines coming up there. There'd always be at least one or two, or an Alpha machine or something else, a computerized machine. And now it's like it's far and few between. I just don't hardly see them. So take that into consideration. Shop around Craigslist. Mostly I would say Craigslist in your own area. A lot of people don't like to ship out of area. I mean, if you're willing to drive, that works. I remember when I bought a machine, it was such a good deal. I drove, I think 300 miles to pick up this machine, but it was like the best deal. So, I went ahead and did that. But, so, you could do that. But otherwise, I don't think people are going to really sell to you on Craigslist from out of state or anything like that. So that would be my second choice, is check on that periodically. There is tennismachines.com. They, over the last few years, they have, because they also repair stringing machines. So if your machine needs something, they're available for that. But I know their inventory is really low. Their hearts. I've had some other folks online tell me that they've been hard to get hold of, and so forth. So I'm not really sure. I haven't used them for a while. So I'm not really sure about that. Some of the manufacturer websites will have, like Wilson and Alpha and Gamma, they will have, you can buy on their website, or they can at least give you a retailer where you can possibly buy the machine. Because, of course, online, Tennis Express, Tennis Warehouse, those kind of places, you can buy some machines, and some will be in stock, others not so much. But so you can find some machines there, but of course, those are going to be new. If you're looking for used, that's not probably going to be an option. Go to your local tennis clubs and put an ad up. Sometimes you'll find that there's some available. Sometimes even tennis clubs have a stringer in the back that they're not using, a second one, or they're no longer stringing, and maybe they'll sell you that machine. Another option would be go to local tennis shops. And just inquire if they know anybody. Sometimes they might have a customer, maybe they'll let you put something up on their board. And you could also put an ad on Craigslist as well, and wanted, like, hey, I'm looking for a used tennis stringing machine. Then, you might get some people to contact you. So that's another option. Go to the big box stores like, Dick's Sporting Goods, Sports Chalet, Big Fives, whatever. Sometimes they might have something, or call the corporate office and see if they have any machines, because sometimes, they might have bought machines for all their stores, and maybe they've upgraded, and so they have some sitting around that they're willing to unload. Oh man, I remember one time when I think it was one of the big box stores in California, they were upgrading their machines, or they were going out of business or something. So they had a whole slew of Babolat Star 4 machines that they were getting rid of. And so, you just got to know about that kind of stuff though when it happens, because it's not going to be open for much, for a long period of time. So, so those are some things as far as for looking used stringing machines. There's not any real magic place where you can look for that. Sometimes if you're connected and you play a lot of tennis and tennis reps that are in the industry, sometimes they hear things. You could contact the United States Racket Stringers Association, because there is a bulletin board. Sometimes people I know will list machines that they have for sale and so forth. But you just got to get the word out there that you're looking for a stringing machine, and that I think will help you. Yeah, I think that's going to really help you. Start getting your feelers out there and stuff, and then maybe you'll just get lucky with one of those places and stuff. But that's really the way to do it. There's no one place that you're going to be able to go and find this. It's yeah. So that's it as far as looking at that. Stringing labor, that was kind of another thing I wanted to touch on. I'm going to be doing a video on that. Just kind of really diving deep into what services are you offering? What are you charging for your labor? What type of equipment are you using for stringing your rackets? All those things. What is your expertise? What do you have to bring to the table where you're going to get business and it's going to be sustainable and people are going to come to you, people are going to refer business to you. And one thing with tennis, it seems like over the last 20, 30 years, labor prices have not increased at the same rate as labor in other industries. I don't know why. Because stringing a tennis racket from beginning to end, with all the labeling it, collecting the money, packaging, whatever it takes half an hour. Honestly, putting a grip on, whatever. Yeah, you could string a racket in less than that, but really it's going to take pretty much half an hour of your time. So how much is half an hour of your time worth? And so, I think that's kind of important. So to really look at looking at labor from that perspective. If you're taking your car to a mechanic, they charge $100 to $200 an hour depending on what kind of car you have. If you go get a tennis lesson, you could be looking at anywhere from $50 to $100 an hour for that, right? Even just hitting with somebody, all that labor has increased. So why is it that tennis stringing labor has not consistently increased as well? So if you know that you can really only offer so much, so if you can really offer so much, you need to make sure that you offer the best, concise services and products and so forth. I'm just reading some of the comments that are in there. Interesting. Okay, but yeah. Anyway, so I would just say create an expertise around what you do. Be professional. I'm going to do a whole video on all that. I'm going to look at. I'll break out all the different prices from what I've found around the country, what people are stringing, what people are charging for racket stringing, and there's some variability there from California to New York and stuff like that. So all that kind of stuff is important. So take that into consideration. And your local area, your geographical area, because I know that's important when you're factoring how much you're going to charge for stringing, and what's your customer base and all that and so forth. So I'm going to break all that down, talk about online stringing, talk about sending your rackets off, maybe even creating that kind of service yourself depending on where you're at. What's that turnaround going to be? How much should you charge? How do you promote yourself? What kind of machine do you have, and how can you leverage that? No matter what you have, use what you have. You don't go out and buy anything else. Start where you're at, build that up. Don't get into debt. All those kind of things. Start a streaming business, have fun. That's what it's about. And come here, and we'll talk about how we can get you to be able to become a better racket technician, racket stringer. Always trying to offer you, those resources. So today we talked about hybrid stringing, getting a little bit deeper into that. Where do you start if you don't have a baseline, and then where do you go when you did start? When you know where you started, and what questions do you ask going to the next level in your stringing. So I hope some of that stuff helped you. And hey, I'm really excited. We hit 100 subscribers. The last video I did on the live Q&A was at 50 subscribers. So that took, I think, about a month and a half. So hopefully this time around, we're going to be able to hit 200 a little bit quicker, and then we'll have another live stream, and we'll have some more exciting stuff. So I'll be making some new videos this week, and I hope you join me. And please, ask questions. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you online. Yeah, I'm getting like